Hello, welcome to Miss Hodgson's online kitchen class. Today I'm making some decorated focaccia bread. This is the first time I've done the decorated focaccia, so I'm quite looking forward to it. If you come over here, so first of all I've weighed out my flour already. There's 500 grams of strong plain flour in here, and if you remember from some of our other bread classes, what makes the bread flour strong? Well, it's the gluten, and if you take a look up here, here's the chemistry behind the gluten. So in the flour, in the gluten, there's little protein strands, and there's two different types. One called gliadin that looks like this, and one called glutenin that looks like that. And then when water's added, they combine together, and then that makes gluten. So that's what makes it really, really stretchy. So it's really, really important to have flour with a really high content of gluten. So that's why you have strong bread flour rather than plain flour. And then the next thing I'm going to add is yeast. So if you've got a packet of yeast, you can add the whole pack. But I've got one of these instead of the sachets. So I need 7 grams. So I'm just going to weigh it on here. 7 grams isn't very much. So it's probably about 1.5 teaspoonfuls. So there's 1 teaspoon, 4 grams. And 6, let's get it accurate, 7, perfect. And then the next thing I need to add is some salt. So I'll just add a little twist of salt. We are going to add more salt at the end on the top. If anyone's had focaccia bread before, they'll know that it's very, very salty, which I really like. And then you need to add 2 tablespoons of oil, olive oil. I'm actually using rapeseed oil today because I don't have any olive oil, but that's fine. It is traditionally made with olive oil, so that is preferable. So 1, 2, and throughout this recipe you'll be using a lot more oil. It's a very oil-rich recipe, but it gives it that flavour and also the crispy texture. And then lastly, we're going to add the water. Now, if you think about when we make normal bread, we use warm water, don't we? So we're using cold water today, which is one main difference. So we have to leave it to rise for quite a long time because we need warmth, don't we? So let's just quickly come up to here again and have a recap on how yeast works. So the yeast feeds off sugar. I'm not actually putting any physical sugar in, but there's naturally occurring sugars in the flour. So it feeds off the sugar. It also needs heat, and then it releases alcohol and CO2. So then that gives it air. So that's what makes the bread rise. Now I'm going to add some of my water. This is about probably twice as much water as you'd normally use for normal bread. So the texture of this is really, really quite different. So I'm just going to start off by using my spoon. Normally I'd get my hands straight in if it was normal bread, but you'll see in a minute how sticky this mixture gets. So I'm just going to stir it round and then add a little bit more water to it. Give it a stir. Already I can feel the stickiness of this dough. And then I'm just going to add the rest, I think. In there we go with that. And if you can see inside, it's getting very, very sludgy. In fact, I think I'll just use my hands. I'm just going to push this off the spoon, and then I'm going to get my hands in. So wash it round like that, and it's really, really, really sticky. And I remember when I made this with my Year 10 class, and they kept coming up to me saying, "Miss, is it supposed to be like this?" Because obviously normal bread, if it was this consistency, you'd add some more flour, wouldn't you? You'd get slightly concerned that it was too sticky, but this is exactly the stickiness you need it, which is quite surprising. So, and there is a certain technique to doing it without getting over your fingers. I'm not sure if I've quite acquired that technique yet, but you have to persevere with mixing it. So a good thing to do is to kind of just grab the edge like that, push it in like so. So first of all, you need to do this, sort of grab it from the edge, push it in, and then push it back for 5 minutes. So I'll come back in 5 minutes when it's been kneaded. Okay, in total, I've been kneading this now for 10 minutes. So if you have a look at the texture, really, really quite sticky, but I think I've got it to a point now where it's not sticking to my hands quite as much. Now, the next step is to get some olive oil. So I've taken 2 tablespoons of olive oil out of this. There's another 3 tablespoons in here. And I'm just going to liberally spread the side with the olive oil. Now, this is probably something that you wouldn't usually do, but it's actually quite enjoyable. So I have quite a lot on there, greasing the side because you want it to go all around the dough. So let's see if this is enough. I'm going to tip the dough out now on the side. Go a bit further back, please. No, the other way. Around there, please. There we go. All right, it's on the side. So I'm just going to turn it around and cover it with olive oil. And then once it's actually covered in olive oil, it becomes a lot less sticky. So, and if you want to at this point, you can go off and wash your hands, because then you won't be getting the dough in your hands, because it's almost like the olive oil coats the dough and coats your hands, and then it doesn't get sticky anymore. So you need to squeeze it and pull it, push it back so you're getting air in it, you're stretching it out. I'm just going to put a bit more oil on like that, so it's completely covered, because it will slightly absorb the oil, and you just need to be squeezing this and stretching it out, and you need to do this for 5 minutes. So we'll come back in 5 minutes and then I'll show you how to press it into your tin. Okay, I've been kneading it for 5 minutes in the oil, so it has absorbed some of the oil, but if you can have a quick close up on it, you can see that you can still touch it without it sticking to your hand. So if you look at my hand here, I haven't actually washed my hands, it's just naturally not sticking to it. So the next thing you need to do is you need to get an appropriate tray. I've got one that's sort of fairly deep, and I'm going to make sure I grease that thoroughly as well. So it's all about making sure there's plenty of oil, because when this focaccia bread comes out, it's going to be really crispy. So it's going to be crispy on the bottom, crispy on the sides, and crispy on the top, and hopefully really lovely and soft in the middle. It's quite a rich tasting bread, and quite often it's flavoured with rosemary or garlic, always lots of salt on the top as well. And it's normally served with like a tomatoey dish or a pasta dish. So in it goes. And I'm just going to push it to the side. I was just trying to think of something to cook to have for dinner with it. But we had bolognese last night, which would have been perfect to have with this. But tonight, I'm not sure. So we might just have to eat it as a side, or just a dish on its own, maybe a starter. Maybe have it tomorrow. It's actually really, really hard. If you can remember what normal bread's like when you try and push it, especially it reminds you of trying to make a pizza base, when you're trying to push it out or roll it, it always brings back. And that's the gluten. So it's a gluten that looks like a spring inside the flour that's making it bounce back every time. So just try and push it all the way to the side. You have to persevere with this. It does go eventually, trust me. Let's just push it over like that. And then once you've pushed it all in, eventually, just persevere with it. It's very, very, very frustrating. But I'm getting there, I'm nearly there. Then you need to leave it for an hour in a warm place, because obviously your yeast needs the warmth, doesn't it, to work. It's going to be releasing CO2, which is going to be creating air bubbles, which is going to be stretching the gluten in the flour, which is going to help it rise. And hopefully this will have doubled in size by the time we get back to it. And then it'll be time to decorate it, which is the part that I'm going to enjoy the most, I think. So on my ingredients sheet, I have put a couple of designs that you could choose from. and some ingredients that you could choose from to make your design. So it's completely up to you. You can freestyle your design. I've got a design in my head, but we'll just see how it turns out. Hopefully it will be good. So there we go. I've managed to just about push it to the edge. Now I'm going to leave this for an hour, just on the top of the cooker, which is the warmest place in the kitchen. I'm going to cover it with cling film, or you can cover it with a tea towel, and then join me in an hour, and then I'll show you how to decorate it. After an hour, I've got my dough out, and I've actually kept it just by the grill, and I had the oven on, so it's been extra warm. And I'm really pleased with the rise on it. It's risen nearly all the way up to the top of the tin, as you can see. And there's lots and lots of air bubbles in it. So this is how you want it. And I've also been prepping all my stuff. So if you have a quick look here, I've got some red onion. I bought some of those mini peppers, and I've cut some of those. I've also got some cherry tomatoes. I've got some flat parsley, and I absolutely despise olives, so I didn't get olives, but I'm just going to use some raisins instead. I may pick those off actually and not actually eat them on there. I've got a design in my head, so I'm going to be creative, and then I'll show you the end result shortly. Voila, this is my end product, well, before it goes in the oven. So you can see that I've used tomatoes, peppers, red onions. With the ones here, I've literally just got the tomato skin and rolled it up. And then I've sprinkled some olive oil on, and that's going to go into the oven. So the final shot will be the finished product. I'm really excited, and I'm excited to eat it as well. This has just come out of the oven, and I'm pretty pleased with it actually. We're just about to have our dinner, so I'm going to serve some of this with our dinner. Good luck with your one. I hope it goes successfully.